Far beyond the bright worlds of the Galactic Empire, deep space was usually silent. The outer border stations rarely saw anything important. Most days were slow, quiet, and boring. Officers simply watched their scanners and waited for routine reports. Commander Ralek had worked at Border Station 12 for almost 10 years. Nothing exciting ever happened there. No battles, no strange ships, just empty space stretching forever. That night seemed exactly the same. Inside the control room, the lights were dim. The giant scanning screen slowly moved as the station searched the dark edge of the galaxy. Officers talked quietly while checking their instruments. Then a small red light suddenly appeared on the scanner. One of the young technicians leaned forward. "Commander, I think we have a signal." Ralek barely looked up from his console. "Probably a cargo ship from the outer colonies," he said calmly. But the technician frowned. "No, sir. This ship, it's not in our database." Now Ralek looked up. Not in the database? Every registered ship in the Empire was recorded. Even pirate vessels usually matched known designs. Unknown ships almost never appeared. Ralek stood and walked toward the main screen. "Put it on the display." The large holographic screen changed. A small blinking mark appeared near the edge of the galaxy. "It entered the galaxy 2 minutes ago," the technician explained. Another officer quickly scanned the signal again. "Strange, the energy output is extremely high." Ralek crossed his arms. "How high?" The officer looked confused. "Higher than a dreadnought." That made several officers turn around. A dreadnought was one of the largest warships the Empire had ever built. Only the Imperial core fleet possessed ships that powerful. Ralek leaned closer to the screen. "Identify the vessel." The station computer began scanning the unknown ship. Lines of data moved quickly across the screen as the system searched thousands of records. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the computer finally finished the scan. One word appeared on the display. The entire room became silent. "Human." No one spoke. One officer slowly whispered, "That can't be right." Ralek stared at the screen. "Run the scan again." The computer repeated the process. Again, the same result appeared. "Human battleship." Several officers looked at each other nervously. Humans were not supposed to exist anymore. Centuries ago, the Galactic Empire fought a terrible war against humanity. The war lasted many years and destroyed entire star systems. Human ships were powerful and extremely dangerous. But in the final battle, the Empire attacked the human home system. After that day, no human ships were ever seen again. The Empire declared humanity extinct. Ralek felt a cold feeling in his chest. "Magnify the image," he ordered. The holographic screen zoomed in on the signal. Slowly, the shape of the unknown vessel appeared. It was massive, long and dark, with heavy armor and strange weapon structures along its surface. The design was unlike any modern ship in the Empire. But some of the older officers recognized the style immediately. One of them whispered quietly, "That's an old Terran warship design." Another technician checked the readings again. "Commander, the ship is traveling alone." Ralek turned. "Alone?" "Yes, sir. There are no escort ships. No fleet. Just one vessel." Some officers began laughing nervously. "Just one ship?" someone said. "Why is everyone so worried?" But Ralek did not laugh. He had studied the old war history. During the Human War, a single Terran battleship once destroyed an entire Imperial attack group. Those ships were built differently. Humans believed in overwhelming power. Ralek looked back at the screen. "Where is it heading?" The technician checked the navigation path. His face slowly turned pale. "Commander, the ship is moving directly toward the inner systems." The room became quiet again. That direction led straight toward the heart of the Galactic Empire. Suddenly, another alarm sounded. A communication officer raised his voice. "Commander, the unknown ship is sending a transmission." Everyone froze. Ralek slowly looked at the screen. "For us?" "Yes, sir." The signal was strong and clear, which meant the human ship wanted to be heard. Ralek took a deep breath. No human signal had been received for over 200 years. And now one had suddenly appeared at the edge of the galaxy. He gave the order carefully. "Do not open the message yet." The officers looked confused, but Ralek kept watching the screen, because something about the situation felt wrong. Very wrong. The human battleship was still moving forward. Slowly, calmly, as if it had absolutely nothing to fear. And across the Empire's outer defense network, The signal from Border Station 12 was already spreading. Within minutes, dozens of Imperial stations received the same report. One message, one impossible discovery. A human battleship had entered the galaxy, and it was heading straight toward the Empire. The report from Border Station 12 reached the Imperial network in less than 3 minutes. At first, most command centers believed it was a mistake. Scanner errors were common in deep space. Sometimes strange radiation created false signals. But this time the signal did not disappear. In fact, it became stronger. Across the Empire, long-range sensors began focusing on the same object. One by one, every station confirmed the same thing. A massive ship was moving slowly through the outer systems. And every scanner identified the same origin. Human. Inside the Imperial capital, the Central Military Command suddenly became very busy. Officers rushed through the halls carrying reports and datapads. Emergency alerts flashed across the control screens. Admiral Varkon stood in the middle of the command room, watching the giant holographic map of the galaxy. A red marker blinked near the border. "That is the ship?" he asked. "Yes, Admiral," a sensor officer replied. All stations confirmed the same signal. Varkon narrowed his eyes. "How large is it?" The officer checked the readings. "Roughly the size of an Imperial dreadnought, but its energy output is much higher." Several officers in the room looked uncomfortable. Energy levels higher than a dreadnought meant only one thing. The ship was extremely dangerous. A young commander spoke confidently. "Admiral, it is only one ship. We can easily destroy it." Some officers nodded in agreement. But Admiral Varkon did not look convinced. He had served in the military for more than 40 years. He had studied the ancient records of the human war. He slowly turned toward the officers. "Do any of you remember what one human battleship did during the siege of Carthus?" The room became quiet. Most of the younger officers had never heard the story. Varkon continued, speaking in a calm voice. "One Terran battleship destroyed 19 Imperial cruisers in less than 10 minutes. Several officers stared at him. "That was 200 years ago," someone said. "Yes," Varkon replied. "And if this ship survived that long, its technology may be even stronger now." At that moment, another officer rushed into the room. "Admiral, new update from the border stations." "What is it?" "The human ship has ignored all warning signals." Varkon frowned. "Explain." "We sent 3 standard Imperial warnings ordering the vessel to stop and identify itself." "And?" The officer swallowed. It did not respond. Instead, the ship continued moving forward, directly toward the Empire. Varkon looked back at the map. The blinking red mark was slowly moving closer to the inner systems. "Have we identified the ship's weapons yet?" he asked. The weapons officer shook his head. "Not completely, but we are detecting extremely unusual power signatures." "What kind of signatures?" The officer hesitated. "Sir, some of these readings are similar to experimental Starbreaker weapons." Several officers suddenly began whispering nervously. Starbreaker weapons were theoretical weapons capable of destroying entire planets or even stars. The Empire had tried to build them many times. Every attempt had failed. Varkon looked serious now. "Are you saying that one human ship may be carrying weapons stronger than our entire fleet?" The officer answered carefully. "We cannot confirm that yet, but the energy readings suggest something very powerful." Before anyone could respond, a new alert sounded across the room. A communication officer quickly stood up. "Admiral, the unknown ship has activated a transmission." The entire command center turned toward the communication screen. "A transmission?" Varkon asked. "Yes, sir." "Directed to who?" The officer checked the signal. Then he looked up slowly. "To the entire Imperial network." The room fell silent. The human ship was not speaking to one station. It was speaking to the entire Empire. The signal was extremely strong. Every command center, every military base, and every border station was receiving the same transmission. Varkon took a slow breath. "Put the message on the main screen." The holographic display changed. A bright signal line appeared in the center, but the message had not opened yet. For several seconds, no one moved. The Empire had not heard a human voice for centuries. And now one human ship had suddenly appeared, broadcasting a message to the entire galaxy. Varkon folded his hands behind his back. "Open the transmission," he ordered quietly. The communication officer hesitated. Then he pressed the control. The screen flickered once. A calm human voice was about to speak. And across the Empire, millions of people waited in silence. Because everyone was thinking the same terrifying thought. If even one human battleship had returned, what if humanity had never disappeared at all? The transmission opened across the entire Imperial network. Every command station, every fleet carrier, and every military base received the signal at the same moment. Even civilian communication towers began detecting the strange broadcast. Inside the Imperial Command Center, the room was completely silent. No one spoke. Everyone watched the main screen. For a few seconds, there was only static. Then the image slowly appeared. At first, the screen showed nothing but darkness. After a moment, a human figure stepped forward into the light. The man looked calm. He wore a dark uniform with a simple silver symbol on the chest. Behind him, the bridge of a massive warship could be seen. Large windows showed distant stars drifting slowly through space. The human looked directly into the camera. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he spoke. "Greetings, Galactic Empire." His voice was clear and steady. There was no fear in it. Inside the command center, Admiral Varkon stared at the screen carefully. The human commander did not look angry or aggressive, but something about his calm expression made the room feel even more tense. The human continued speaking. "My name is Commander Elias Ward of the Terran battleship Aegis Prime." Several officers immediately began typing notes and recording the message. The name of the ship spread quickly through the network. The human commander paused for a moment before speaking again. "I understand that my presence here may be surprising." A few officers exchanged nervous looks. Surprising was a small word for what was happening. The human race had been declared extinct for more than 200 years. Yet here stood a human commander, speaking calmly from the bridge of a powerful warship. Commander Ward continued, "Before your fleets begin making aggressive decisions, I believe it is important that you understand why we are here." The command room remained silent. Admiral Varkon watched every movement of the human officer. "We did not come to start a war," Ward said calmly. Those words made several officers relax slightly. But the human commander was not finished. "For centuries," he continued, "humanity has been watching this galaxy from beyond its borders." The sentence caused immediate confusion. Watching. Many officers looked at each other. Had humans been alive this entire time? Ward spoke again. "When the human war ended, our leaders made a difficult decision. We chose to leave the galaxy rather than continue endless destruction." The screen behind him briefly showed an image of distant stars and strange galaxies far away. "We built colonies beyond the outer void. We grew stronger. We advanced our technology. And we watched." The command center was completely silent now. The human commander folded his hands behind his back. "For 200 years, the galaxy has grown peacefully. Civilizations have developed. Trade has expanded. Many species have lived without fear of extinction." Then his voice became slightly colder. "But recently, that balance has started to change." Admiral Varkon slowly leaned forward. Commander Ward continued, "Our long-range observation networks detected military expansion across the Empire. Entire fleets gathering. Weapons being prepared." The holographic display behind him changed again. Several star systems appeared on the screen. "These systems belong to smaller civilizations," Ward explained. "Civilizations that cannot defend themselves against an Imperial invasion." Some officers in the command center immediately protested. "That is not confirmed," one officer shouted. But the human commander continued speaking as if he had not heard them. "Humanity once made a promise," Ward said calmly. "If any power in this galaxy threatened the survival of weaker species, humanity would return." The room felt colder. Several officers looked toward Admiral Varkon, waiting for his reaction. The human commander took one step closer to the camera. "I was sent here for one reason: to observe whether the Empire still respects the balance of this galaxy." Varkon spoke quietly to his officers. "He is threatening us." But the human commander did not sound angry. He sounded patient. Then he said something that made the entire command room freeze. "You may send your fleets if you wish." The human commander looked completely relaxed. His voice remained calm. "The Aegis Prime will not run." For a moment, there was silence. Then the human commander gave one final statement. "But I should warn you." Behind him, massive weapon systems slowly powered up across the battleship's hull. Bright energy lines appeared across the ship like glowing veins. These weapons were designed during the centuries you believed we were gone. The energy readings on Imperial scanners suddenly began rising. Fast. Very fast. Some officers stared at their monitors in disbelief. The power levels were far beyond anything the Empire possessed. Commander Ward looked into the camera one last time. Choose your next move carefully. Then the transmission ended. The screen went dark. Inside the Imperial Command Center, no one spoke for several seconds. Finally, a sensor officer whispered in shock. Admiral, the human battleship just activated weapons strong enough to destroy a star system. Admiral Varkon slowly looked back at the holographic map. The lone red marker was still moving calmly toward the Empire. One ship, just one, and suddenly the most powerful empire in the galaxy did not know what to do next. For several minutes after the transmission ended, the Imperial Command Center remained silent. No one moved. No one spoke. The words of the human commander still echoed in every officer's mind. You may send your fleets if you wish. Admiral Varkon stared at the holographic map of the galaxy. The red signal representing the human battleship continued moving slowly toward the inner systems. It did not change course. It did not slow down. It moved forward with quiet confidence. Finally, Varkon broke the silence. Prepare the 3rd Defense Fleet. Several officers looked surprised. The 3rd Defense Fleet was one of the largest battle groups in the Empire. It contained more than 200 warships, including cruisers, destroyers, and heavy carriers. A young officer stepped forward. Admiral, are we sure this is necessary? It is only one ship. Varkon turned his head slowly. Exactly, he replied. That is why we must treat it seriously. The officer lowered his head and returned to his console. Within minutes, orders spread across the Imperial network. Warships stationed across nearby systems began preparing for deployment. Engines powered up. Weapons were loaded. Fighter squadrons launched from carriers. Across the Empire, millions of citizens watched the news feeds with growing fear. The galaxy had not seen a human ship for centuries. And now an entire Imperial fleet was preparing to fight one. Hours later, the 3rd Defense Fleet reached the outer system where the human battleship had been detected. The fleet commander, Admiral Tarek Solon, stood on the bridge of the Imperial flagship Iron Judgment. The large viewing window showed hundreds of Imperial ships surrounding the Dark Star system. Scan for the target, Solon ordered. Moments later, the sensors locked onto the human ship. There it is, the sensor officer reported. A holographic image appeared above the command table. The Terran battleship Aegis Prime floated quietly near a distant star. It looked enormous. Long, armored, and heavily armed, the ship seemed built like a moving fortress. But what made the officers uneasy was its behavior. It was not moving. It was waiting. Admiral Solon crossed his arms. So this is the famous human battleship, he said. One of his officers spoke nervously. Sir, our scanners show extremely high energy readings coming from the ship. Solon nodded. Expected. Should we open communication? Solon thought for a moment. No. He looked around the bridge confidently. We will show them that the Empire does not fear ghosts from the past. He raised his hand. Fleet formation attack pattern. Across the system, hundreds of Imperial ships began moving into position. Cruisers formed attack lines. Destroyers prepared missile batteries. Fighters spread across space like a dark swarm. The human battleship remained completely still. Admiral Solon gave the final order. Target the enemy vessel. Hundreds of targeting systems locked onto the Aegis Prime. Fire. The darkness of space exploded with light. Thousands of laser beams and missile trails rushed toward the lone human ship. The attack looked unstoppable. For a moment, it seemed impossible that any vessel could survive such a strike. But just before the weapons reached the ship, something appeared. A glowing shield suddenly formed around the human battleship. The first wave of lasers struck the barrier and vanished. Missiles exploded harmlessly against the shield like tiny sparks. The Imperial officers stared in shock. Impossible, one officer whispered. Admiral Solon frowned. All ships continue firing. Another wave of weapons crossed space. Again, the shield absorbed everything. The human ship still had not moved. Then something changed. The Aegis Prime slowly rotated. Large weapon ports opened along its surface. Energy began building inside the ship. The sensor officer suddenly shouted, "Sir, massive energy spike." Before anyone could react, A bright beam of white light shot across space. The beam struck the front line of Imperial cruisers. 3 ships disappeared instantly. Not destroyed. Gone. Completely erased from space. The bridge of the Iron Judgment became silent. Then another beam fired. 5 more ships vanished. Panic spread across the fleet communication channels. Shields failing. Multiple ships lost. We cannot stop that weapon. Admiral Solon gripped the command rail tightly. Return fire. All ships. But the battle had already turned. The Aegis Prime moved slowly through the battlefield like a giant predator. Each time its weapons fired, more Imperial ships vanished. Within minutes, the attack formation collapsed. Fighters fled. Cruisers tried to retreat. But the human battleship was faster. Another beam crossed the system. The flagship Iron Judgment shook violently as nearby ships exploded. Admiral Solon stared at the destruction around him. His fleet was being erased. By one ship. Across the Imperial network, every command station watched the battle in horror. Hundreds of Imperial warships had been sent to stop the human vessel. And they were losing. Very badly. As the last Imperial ships tried to escape the battlefield, the Aegis Prime finally stopped firing. It simply floated in the quiet system again. Untouched. Across the galaxy, one terrifying truth became clear. If a single human battleship could destroy an entire Imperial fleet, then the Empire had a much bigger problem than anyone had imagined. The battle ended as suddenly as it had begun. Across the empty star system, broken pieces of Imperial ships drifted slowly through space. What had once been one of the Empire's most powerful fleets was now nothing more than silent wreckage. The Terran battleship Aegis Prime floated calmly in the center of the battlefield. Its weapons were quiet. Its shields were still glowing faintly. And most frightening of all, the ship had not suffered any damage. Far away in the Imperial capital, the command center was completely silent again. Every officer had watched the battle through live transmissions from the fleet. No one could believe what they had seen. 200 Imperial warships had attacked a single enemy vessel. And the result had not even been close. Admiral Varkon stood in front of the large holographic map, staring at the blinking signal that represented the human battleship. His voice was calm, but heavy. Open communication with the Terran vessel. A communication officer nodded quickly. Yes, Admiral. The signal was sent immediately. For several seconds nothing happened. Then the screen flickered. Commander Elias Ward appeared again on the display. He looked exactly the same as before. Calm, relaxed, almost patient. Behind him, the bridge of the human battleship remained quiet. Officers worked at their stations as if nothing unusual had happened. Varkon stepped forward. Commander Ward, he said. The human nodded slightly. Admiral Varkon. Varkon narrowed his eyes. You destroyed one of our largest fleets. Ward did not look proud. He simply replied, Your fleet attacked first. Several Imperial officers shifted uncomfortably. Varkon took a slow breath. You said humanity returned to protect the balance of the galaxy. Yes. Then answer one question, Varkon said firmly. Is this the beginning of a human invasion? The command center waited for the answer. Ward was silent for a moment. Then he shook his head. No. The room seemed to relax slightly. But the human commander continued speaking. Humanity does not want to rule the galaxy. Varkon looked skeptical. Then why return at all? Ward walked slowly across the bridge behind him. Through the large window, distant stars moved across the darkness. 2 centuries ago, he explained, humanity realized something important. War never truly ends. Empires rise. Civilizations grow powerful. And eventually someone decides they deserve to rule everything. He turned back toward the camera. So humanity left. Several officers looked confused. You left the entire galaxy? One officer asked quietly. Ward nodded. We explored the void beyond the galactic borders. We discovered new systems, new technologies, and new ways to live. The human commander folded his arms calmly. But before we left, humanity made a promise. Varkon listened carefully. If any civilization became powerful enough to threaten the entire galaxy, Ward said slowly, humanity would return to restore the balance. The meaning of those words spread through the command room. The Aegis Prime was not an invasion ship. It was a warning. Varkon spoke carefully. You believe the Empire has become that threat? Ward looked directly into the camera. Our observation networks detected massive fleet construction across your territory. Your leaders were preparing to invade several weaker civilizations. A few officers immediately tried to argue, but Varkon raised his hand to silence them. The human commander continued calmly. The Aegis Prime was sent only to observe the situation, and to remind the Empire that the galaxy is not defenseless. The message was clear. Humanity was watching. Varkon thought for a long moment before speaking again. And if the Empire continues expanding? Ward's answer came without hesitation. Then humanity will return. The human commander stepped slightly aside. For the first time, the screen showed the full view behind him. Dozens of massive stars glowed outside the window, but hidden among the distant darkness were faint shapes. Large shapes. Ships. Many ships. Imperial officers leaned forward in shock. They were Terran warships. Hundreds of them, waiting silently far beyond the system. Ward spoke one final time. The Aegis Prime came alone because one ship was enough to deliver the message. But humanity is never truly alone. The command center felt cold. The Empire had believed humans were extinct. Instead, they had simply been waiting outside the galaxy, growing stronger. Ward gave a small nod. Choose peace, Admiral. Then the screen went dark. Moments later, the signal from the Aegis Prime began moving again. But this time it was leaving. The human battleship turned slowly and disappeared into deep space, far beyond the stars, leaving the Empire with one terrifying realization. Humanity had never vanished. They had simply been watching. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the galaxy, the Terran fleets were still there,